chair of the search committee. Our candidate to IIHR director is our friend Gabriele Villarini, and Gabriele has had a very rapid and meteoric rise in his career so far, and we are glad to have him be a candidate for an exciting future for IIHR. The last time we had a young person as a candidate, IIHR fared very well, so we hope that we can maintain that. Gabriele received his PhD from the University of Iowa in 2008. And between 2008 and 2012, he was at Princeton University as a researcher. He joined us in 2012 as assistant professor, and rose to be associate director of IIHR in 2016, in 4 years. He's a very well-regarded researcher in hydrometeorology, climatology, and has done some really interesting work in extreme event forecasting using applied statistics and uncertainty modeling. He's a fellow of the American Geophysical Union and has won several awards. I just mentioned 3 of them. In 2013, he received the Hydrological Sciences Outstanding Young Scientist Award. In 2014, he received the LSF Career Award. And in 2017, he received the Water Young Investigator Award by Water. So we are looking forward to a great rousing speech by Gabriele. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everybody, for coming here. Uday said I'm a star, a meteorite. Hopefully, I'm not going to be a shooting star and then just die off as it goes. Thank you for coming here today. I want to give you a little bit of, I want to present my vision for IIHR. And we all know that we have an amazing and rich history. But as the title of my presentation itself implies, I do believe we have a bright future ahead of us. I've structured my presentation in 2 parts. The first, the shorter parts, tells you a little bit about who I am, what I do, what my interests are. And the longer part, it's about us. It's my vision for the lab. So, as Uday mentioned, I'm a product of this program. I graduated in 2008. My office, my desk, was on the 2nd floor facing Riverside Drive. And I'm in my last semester of the Executive MBA program at the TP School of Business. So given that I'm 3/4 of the way down, I guess I can say I'm a 1 3/4 degree older from the University of Iowa. And I'm expected to graduate this spring. About me, I don't want you to go over my CV, I don't want to read it. The reason why I put this up is I want to give you a little bit of a sense of where I've been, where I was, and how these opportunities have shaped my research interest and also my vision for the lab. And I'll just identify a few of them. As I mentioned, after graduating in 2008, I moved to Princeton, where I was a postdoc and a research scholar for 4 years. I was also Willis Research Network fellow, and my experience in Princeton really broadened up my research horizon, but it also brought to my attention a sector and a field of which admittedly I didn't know anything before, the insurance and reinsurance sector, with all their needs and with all their requirements, if you wish. It allowed me to meet with sector people, but also to develop collaborations that are still lasting today. After I was an assistant professor and an associate professor after I came back here in Iowa. And from an administrative perspective, the one element that I found very useful was to be the director of graduate studies for civil and environmental engineering. That experience brought to my attention the difficulties and the excitement that are involved in developing a high-profile, diverse graduate program. More from an administrative perspective, I was first associate and then the interim director for IIHR, and that experience really showed me what it would mean to be the director of IIHR. In terms of awards, they listed some of them, but the one I want to focus on is the James B. McElwain Medal by the American Geophysical Union. This is a medal that has been conferred and awarded to 3 to 5 people every year in the world in the field of geophysics, intended as from the center of the Earth to space and everything in between. It comes with being a fellow of AGU, the American Geophysical Union, and just to put it in perspective, if you look at the people who received it before me, about 50% went on to become National Academy of Sciences or National Academy of Engineering members, including the current president of the National Academy of Sciences. In terms of scholarship, I like to joke that I don't have a writer's block, and I'm listing the 150 papers as the threshold because this is what's required to join the University of Iowa College of Engineering Faculty Milestone Award. That is a way of recognizing the faculty who go beyond the norms for tenure and promotion. It's not just the quantity, but it's also the quality of the work that we do. So far, I've published 1 paper in Science, 2 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, including 1 last week, and 3 in Nature and Climate Change. Despite the increased administrative load and despite the executive MBA, I'm still on an upward trajectory, if you wish, and a lot of it is a testament for the work that graduate students, colleagues, researchers, postdocs have been doing. So none of this would have been possible without them. And the work itself has been well received by the community at large. In terms of what I do, I just want to give you a 30,000-foot view of the research interest that we have in my group. A lot of the work I used to do, and I still do, is related to the detection of changes in hydrometeorological extremes. And so we looked at flooding, hurricanes, heavy rainfall, and this is probably the combination of all our effort. This is work led by one of my former PhD students that has received quite a bit of attention, where we show that it's not a change in the magnitude, but rather a change in the frequency of flood events that can be detected from the observational record. And so a way of summarizing this is that it's not that the largest flood peaks are getting larger, but rather that we have been experiencing a larger number of flood events. This is very interesting, but it only takes us so far. It only tells us whether something has changed. It doesn't tell us why. And the why becomes critical if we want to move forward. And so the detection work needs to be complemented by work on attribution. And the work on attribution is something that we have been actively doing in my group, where we are looking at trying to understand what led to the year-to-year changes in discharge from low flows to high flows and everything in between. Across, for instance, large areas of the Midwest. And so you have a climate component, you also have changes in use and cover, so agriculture, or changes in urbanization that do play a significant role. The framework that we have devised works very well, and we are currently using it towards seasonal predictions, seasonal and decadal predictions and climate projections. We're not only focusing on water quantity, but we have also complemented and applied this approach towards water qualities. This is some of the work I've done with Chris and Keith, looking at understanding how nitrate concentrations have been changing over time and try to understand why. What are the drivers that led to the changes we observed? This is work that right now we've done for a site, almost as a proof of concept. But in the upcoming months, we're going to apply to a much broader set of sites across the Midwest. So in general, from an attribution perspective, it's not just the climate that plays a role, but it's also the land use and cover changes. In particular, one of the most recent studies that we've done is looking at Hurricane Harvey and looking at the effect that the urbanization has played in enhancing the flooding from this hurricane in the Houston metropolitan area. A lot of the focus in urban impacts on flooding has been focusing on the changes in hydrological processes. So with increased urbanization, you get faster response, bigger peaks, no infiltration. And so that's a very important component. The other element that we have actively examining is the effect of the urban areas in changing the rainfall footprint. And so from modeling work, it turns out that for such a big event, urbanization leads to enhancement in rainfall during this event. And so when you combine these two effects, the meteorological and the hydrological component, you actually end up getting that when you do the math, you have a tenfold increase because of urbanization in the probability of such big events, flood events in the Houston metropolitan area. Tropical cyclones and hurricanes may not be big players in the Midwest, as we probably know, but nonetheless they are major flood agents across large areas of the country, especially the eastern US. And this is some work that I've done in collaboration with another fellow who I met through the Willis Research Network, Jeff Sakowski at the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. Here what we've done, we've complemented our expertise. It's not, when you look at flooding and you look at the impacts, what we focused on was can we understand what leads to the insurance claims that have been filed in response or after a big flood events coming from a tropical cyclone. And so what we've done is we've complemented the hazard, so the flooding, with all other drivers. In particular, for instance, you can think of population density, population residing in higher risk areas. And so all of the drivers that you would expect, so the bigger the flood event, the larger the number of claims you would expect on average, everything else being equal. The more populated the areas under threat, the bigger the number of claims expected. That's all true. The main difference, one of the elements that we've found is besides quantifying this role, is that we've also identified areas where there was low market penetration. So even though there was a big flood, there were no claims filed. And so what that points to is the fact that there was no market penetration. There were no policies in place, therefore no claims could have been filed. And so this kind of work is something that we are exploring towards complementing the impact to more an impact, to complementing the hazard, the flooding, towards a more impact-related driven research. The work I do is not just science for the heck of science, but it also has some very practical application. This is some of the research I've done for the Army Corps of Engineers, which has led to the writing of these engineering technical letters that provides guidelines on how to detect non-stationarities in flood peak records. This document has then been complemented with an online tool that allows users to perform the kind of analysis that I've detailed in that engineering letter. And so that allows for a much more coherent, reproducible set of analysis that can be applied in many project settings. We are currently, so this was on the detection part, and now we are working towards an attribution document similar to this, the details on how we do attribution and what are the methodologies that we can implement for designing an uncertain future. Designing for a future where the past does not represent what we expect to happen moving forward. And so I'm contributing to the Army Corps of Engineering guidelines on how to move forward. With this, I think I've talked enough about me, and now it's time that we talk about us. And so I want to now switch gears and tell you a little bit about my vision for IIHR moving forward. I'm going to start with the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities as they came up from the most recent self-study. And so when we were asked, we identified our strength, our personnel, our reputation, our facilities, the diversity in the research we conduct, and finances. You look at the weaknesses, and we have funding concerns, aging facilities. How do we attract the top people, and how do we retain a sense of camaraderie now that IIHR has blossomed and has expanded quite a bit? Opportunities. the new building, collaborative research, and growing the statewide research. Threats, finances, attracting people, top people, the aging facilities, the competition, the outside competition. So you can see that if you just look at the elements on each of these panels, you can see that some of our strengths and opportunities are probably also our biggest weaknesses or threats. I agree with most of the elements that have been listed here, and because we can see that these threats are out there, what I want to do is, through my vision that I will present today, try to address or try to mitigate the potential negative effects that we see coming down the pipe. So this is my vision: to expand our presence within the federal agencies and the private and commercial sector, to further enhance our local, national, and international leadership in hydroscience and engineering, and to increase the diversity in our research program. All right, so a vision without a strategy is a dream. And so what I want to do next is I want to identify, go basically sentence by sentence, tell you a little bit more about why I think this is important, and provide you with a strategy, with a path forward, so that we can try to accomplish what's listed here. And so I'm going to start with to expand our presence within the federal agencies. If you look at our finances, these are grant expenditure for the past couple of years, you see that we are on the order of about $16–17 million. You also see that we have a reasonably diversified portfolio of funding. If you were to look at this in a coarser way, we can probably identify three major categories. One is federal support, one is state, and one is more contract work. Why I think it's important to maintain a well-balanced portfolio, because it allows us to operate on different timescales. And I'm going to work towards each one of them. Let's think about the federal grants. We know that the federal grants are probably those that are going to give us the longer timescale in terms of planning. Usually they're 2, 3, 4 years, and once awarded, unless something happens, we expect the money to come so that we can do the research. And so they give us this a little bit of a longer term temporal horizon, and they also provide FNA, which is what the university has, the rate agreed by the university. Then we have the state funding, which has been a growing part of our portfolio. The state funding, generally, they give us a 1-year temporal horizon to work with, very reduced or no indirect recovery. But what it allows us to do is that it allows us to build capacity. It allows us to build an infrastructure that then that will permit us to complement the work we are already doing, to try to go after bigger grants. And then you have the contract work. The contract work, as I've been learning, meeting with the lawyer, with Troy on a weekly basis, it's very, very hard to plan for, because we don't know what's coming up. And when something comes up, there is a very quick turnaround in terms of bidding, decision, and execution of the project. And so the temporal horizon for planning is very limited, but it comes at the advantage that the indirect rate that can be negotiated is much higher than, potentially higher than what the university would allow us. So there are these different temporal scales that have all pros and cons. What I want to focus on is more on the federal side. And if you think about the expansion of the lab in terms of research capability, our faculty headcount, as well as our research staff and postdoc, has increased dramatically, has increased quite a bit over the past several years. And so you can view this almost as the firepower that we have to go after very interesting research projects. It's not just the number, but it's also the diversity and the quality of the people involved that will allow us to expand on the potential funding capabilities that we have. Particularly, if you look at the National Academy of Engineering grant challenges for this century, I believe we are well positioned to address at least 3 of the 14 that have been listed. Provide access to clean water, manage the nitrogen cycle, restore and improve the urban infrastructure. So, how do we do this? And so what I'm going to do now, I have a couple of slides where I'll be presenting some of the potential initiatives that we can go after. One is building on the work that the Flood Center has been doing, and building on all the capabilities even more so. So if you rewind a little bit, years ago, Representative Lobsack put forth a bill for the establishment of the National Flood Research and Education Center. At that time, nowadays there is the National Water Center down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So the idea of establishing a National Flood Center is probably not very realistic at this point. But there are other avenues that we are exploring. Last week we met, Larry, Videk and I, we met with our federal relationship representative for the university. We stationed in DC, and we gave him a little bit of a history of where we were, and also told them a little bit more about how we've been interacting, for instance, with the Water Center. Videk has been leading the effort in bridging the connection with the Water Center. And Videk and Ibrahim went down to Tuscaloosa in November, October. Larry and I, we called in. And one possible avenue to collaborate with them is through establishment of a consortium of universities, where there would be funding to potentially a handful of universities that would perform work that is necessary complementing the needs of the National Water Center. So this is one opportunity moving forward. Another one is the National Science Foundation Science and Technology Center, or STC. This is an opportunity we are working towards in collaboration with collaborators at Louisiana State University. Several of them came up here last November, last fall. Some of us are going down to Baton Rouge in March during spring break. And the idea is to put forth an STC project, an STC proposal. The topic of the proposal is still something we're discussing, that this is why we're having these meetings. But broadly speaking, the general idea is to have, looking at the Mississippi as the thread that connects the coastal areas of the Gulf with the Midwest, revolving around the water quality, water quantity, coastal flooding, inland flooding. And so during this upcoming meeting, the plan is to finalize and solidify more what the direction of the research is going to be. If you look at what has been funded in terms of this STC, there is very little related to water. We tried, which is good and bad. We tried it twice, wasn't successful. Water is one of those topics that it seems like everybody's dealing with it, but nobody really owns. And so now we're trying a little bit of a different approach. If you look at what has been funded, though, there was the closest thing I can find was something related to arid environment and something related to landscape evolution. And these were many, many years ago. So there is really nothing in the most recent years that is tied to this kind of problems that we've been focusing on. What else? So another option is this RISA, Regional Integrated Sciences and Assessment Centers. These are 5-year projects through NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So every year there is a competition addressing different parts of the country. You look at what has been funded so far, there is Alaska, islands in the Pacific, West Coast, East Coast, Southern US, the Great Lakes. There is nothing over the Midwest. And I believe we are well positioned to go after an opportunity of this kind. I've already been in touch with friends and colleagues at the GFDL, Geophysics Fluid Dynamics Laboratory out of Princeton, and they are interested in joining in whenever the opportunity for the Midwest will present itself. And I would most likely also reach out to colleagues at Illinois, at the University of Illinois, so that we have a broader Midwest perspective. There are NSF engineering research centers that are opportunities where is the science with more of an industry flavor, if you wish. Is the science, but with the idea of extending it to the industry. There have been 3 generations of these so far, and the 4th one is probably coming up within the next couple of years. MURI, so from the Office of Naval Research, another possibility is the Multidisciplinary University Research Initiative. In terms of NIH, when I looked at opportunities, there is the program Project Grants P01. Another element that I've been working on is submitting a proposal through the Copernicus system. Copernicus is basically the only funding call by the European Union that allows EU funds to be transferred outside of the European Union. And the idea is I'm working with the Climate Center in Italy, and we want to put forth a project related to the seasonal forecasting predictability of climate, weather, and impacts. I'm going to meet with them again in June when I go back, and as soon as the funding call comes out, they are very interested in applying the methodology that we have been developing to a European context, complementing with large, broader impacts. Now, all of this is nice, but I also recognize that despite they are potentially high impact research, but also the likelihood of success might be low. It's highly competitive, and one of the things that I plan on doing is to provide administrative support to those who take a leadership role in going after these projects, because it's a big time investment on the part of many of us, and so that's given the likelihood of success and the investment in terms of time. That's a way that I'm trying to a little bit offset the potential risk of getting into something like this. Another couple of elements I want to highlight. One is that obviously this is an incomplete list. I don't mean for any of this to be comprehensive. Each of you are probably thinking, oh, we could do this or we could do that. Absolutely, and I would love to hear what your perspective is, what opportunities you foresee. Let me know. Okay, I don't mean and some of these may or may not even be applicable to us. Let me know, give me feedback, give me inputs. Also, these are the more traditional opportunities, if you wish, NSF, NOAA, NIH. Another element that I'm considering, based on the conversations I've had with many of you, is that right now we are playing in a field that is getting a little overcrowded. Everybody's applying almost for the same pot of money. And there has been the suggestion that why don't we identify somebody, another person, who could actually learn about what each of us does and be able to scan this funding landscape and find opportunities in areas where we never even thought about. And so this was something that was brought up a few times. And I think having somebody like this and maybe interface more with the College of Engineering, so it's IIHR but also more from the College of Engineering, would allow us to align IIHR more within the college, but also provide opportunities for IIHR researchers and faculty members. Now we switch from the federal and now more to the private and contract commercial sectors. This shows you the federal grant expenditures, how they've increased over time. And over the past few years, we've been between $16 and $17 million. If you look at the FNA recovered from these efforts, they've been going up as well. You can probably visually see that probably not as steeply as the grant expenditures. And part of it, again, we go back to the portfolio. Now it's diversified what we do. You look at you dial the time back to 2004, you see that about 60% of our FNA recovery, I'm sorry, you dial back at 2004, you look at our grant expenditures were about 60% coming from contract work, and less so from other federal sources. Fast forward, corporate expenditure, corporations and contract work has been reduced to 10% of what it used to be, of a pie that has increased by 2.34 times. So our contract work has been going down, and it has been replaced by, complemented by other sources. So the federal and the state opportunities. This is in terms of grant expenditures. You look at F&A, 2004 versus 2017, well, the picture is dramatically changing. You see that now about 70% of our indirect work coming from contract work. Now we are at about 10% of what it used to be, of a pie that is increased by 1.6 times. So we have grant expenditure increasing 2.34 times, F&A increasing by 1.6 times, and if you try to visualize this in terms of circles, this is the F&A in 2004, this is the F&A in 2017, and this is what the F&A would have been had it increased at the same rate as the grant expenditures. So the take-home from here is that we have expanded our research and the research capabilities, but now we are running on a very lean machine, that doesn't have roughly $1.7 million that would maybe be needed towards accomplishing everything we want to accomplish. It also ties our hands a little bit in terms of investment that we can do towards other initiatives. And so this is, if you look over time, so these are our F&A, the income by source. This is our total for the past, since 2004. This is the corporate work, what I showed you, the contract work. And so this has been going up, while this one has been going, the blue has been going down, being replaced by the support, the income coming from state and federal contributions. And if you were to combine this and look at what the fractional contribution was, we went from about 60+% coming from corporate work to less than 10% nowadays. So in a sense, it's as if our pendulum is swung from one side to the other. And what we have to do is, this is great, but we have to keep on growing, at least this side, the corporate work. Why? Because as I mentioned, even if it has a much shorter time span in terms of planning, it also comes with higher reward when it comes to the F&A program. So how do we do this? So meeting with Troy, these are some of the opportunities that we have identified. One is to build on the expertise that we have in CFD. And meeting with Pablo, Marcella, and with Troy, I think we're well positioned to develop a CFD code that looks at pump stations and pump intakes. Nothing exists out there that would allow people to perform this kind of analysis. All of the work is done through physical modeling. And what I want IIHR to be is the first one to develop the capabilities to simulate pump intakes and pump stations using numerical codes. And that will give us a competitive advantage against any other people in the market. This is my shortest term interest. So this is basically what I would start right away, going after. These are other areas where we have quite a bit of expertise from the physical modeling side, and these are much more complex problems. And so these are more medium to longer term projects developing CFD codes that would allow us to simulate those kind of systems. Much more complex, and I can see this as two advantages. One is that it would allow to push forward the science, because these are complex problems for which we can make a critical contribution. And the other is that also provides us with capabilities that are going to be unmet outside of our institution. More generally, one of the approaches that I want to follow is to travel. To go and tell people how good we are, and to tell them what we can do, and to learn about what they're interested in. There might be something that they are after that we don't even know about, but we have the capabilities to do. And so, for instance, Troy and I, in 2 weeks, we're going to New York and Boston for 2 days, for meetings over the course of 2 days, meeting with consultants, consulting companies. There is a conference where Troy has a paper as well, where we'll be meeting with with people there. And what we want to do is just tell them, here we are, this is what we do, this is how great we are. Does it resonate with you? And what else are you looking for? And so this is the first step of a series of activities for the over the upcoming month. So part of it is put ourselves out there. So far, we have been very busy with work when it comes to this kind of activities. That there was really not a strong need to do that. Now that we are in a little bit of a downturn, this is the time to act on it, so that the pendulum that I mentioned is going to start swinging the other way. Other opportunities through foundations. Carmen and Larry went to Minneapolis and meet with the McKnight Foundation in November. They got good feedback, and they saw that now we are submitting a pre-proposal within the next couple of weeks to the McKnight Foundations. We have also had communications with the Walton Foundation and the Cargill Foundation, and to get a little bit of a sense of what they're after and how we can help them. Now, this ties back to my experience in Princeton working for the Willis Research Network. Probably we all heard about Houston and the National Flood Insurance Program, which is the federal program run by FEMA that provides flood insurance to residential and commercial areas. If you look at historically, up to about prior to 2005, this program was basically self-sustaining itself. It was all the premiums that were coming in were enough to pay for all the losses that were claimed. Then Katrina and Sandy happened, and now with Harvey, this program is in the hole for tens of billions of dollars. And so there has been a conversation in Congress and also at the presidential level in terms of the reauthorization of this program and how to potentially open this up to the private sector, because this kind of situations may or may not be manageable moving forward. Last week again we met with our federal relationship person from the university, and we told him to investigate this further, what the status of the National Flood Insurance Program is, and when he goes back to DC. I think he's already back early this week. And Vida, Claire, and I are planning on going to DC this spring to meet with the staff and our delegation and to discuss more about this consortium of universities, other opportunities, and to get a little bit more clarity on these issues. This is not something new to us. I looked at the thesis that we have in the office, and I actually found one that was on the flood insurance. It dates back to 1960. It was a master thesis. And as I read this thesis by this gentleman, it was very interesting how the problems that he raised, or the problems that he discussed back almost 70 years ago, are still applicable today. So it's really something that, in a sense, we have in our DNA. We just haven't uncovered it yet. So far, I focused on flooding in the US. This is something that is much broader than this. Can be both in terms of spatial extent as well as hazards. I've been in conversations with people in the insurance business, and they actually were telling me that they have developed an appetite, or a growing appetite, to enter this kind of markets, because they now have a better sense for what the flood losses could be, so that then they can price better these products. And I recently submitted a small grant through call that is supported by insurance and insurance sector industries, and also trying to find a way to leverage the connection with Willis and the Wharton School of Business. And so we are figuring out a mechanism for us to be involved there. But the broader picture again is travel, go out there, and I would plan to meet with, to visit the people who I know in this sector and see what they need and what we can learn from them. This is the part that looks at our reputation and how do we enhance it moving forward. So if you look at our external review, this is a quote from there. Basically, all the activities that we've done have elevated the visibility of IIHR within the state and beyond. how do we continue that? This is not a static process. It's not a one-time and done kind of deal. So these are a few options that I've identified. One is to visit. Again, be out there, and it's not just doesn't have to be me. Travel to these federal labs, national federal agencies. Again, talk to them, tell them what we do, learn what they are interested in. I have in my MBA class somebody who works at Grinnell College, who is fundraiser for major donors for Grinnell. And over the next month, I'm actually meeting with her to learn a little bit about how to do fundraising, especially going after major donors, and how do we cultivate the relationships with our alumni and the potential donors. And also, I would like to have to provide the opportunity to invite high-profile scientists, National Academy of Science, National Academy of Engineering members, to either for their sabbatical or part of the summer, and provide some financial support for their visit. So those are the mechanisms to accomplish this. Finally, to increase the diversity in our research program. If you look at the College of Engineering, this is the number of underrepresented minority and female tenure track faculty members. This is the target we gave ourselves, and this is where we are. And so, if we also look at the expertise that we have with Jacob retiring, Larry moving more in an administrative position, the edge that we had in terms of sediment transport, we are effectively losing it. And so whenever the opportunity presents itself, I would like to go after a faculty hire in sediment transport, trying to target underrepresented minority or a female candidate, not necessarily a junior candidate, but potentially trying to go after a mid-career scientist, a mid-career faculty member. Part of this is so that IIHR can align more strongly with the College of Engineering, so we can provide some support towards achieving the targets we set for ourselves. These are impressive targets, but we have to try to do our best to get there. If you look at our graduate program, and this is the number of underrepresented minority graduate students, again, this is our target. This is where we are. With the experience I had of being the DGS for civil and environmental engineering, it became clear how hard it is to maintain, sustain, and keep a high-level, diverse graduate program. But we've made progress in that arena. Michelle and Dave, they've been able to accomplish this, and it doesn't come easy. But they were able to accomplish this through the NRT, the National Science Foundation Research Traineeship Program. We're now in our second to third year, something like that. But the first cohort of students, we had 17 students. Out of these, 11 were women, 4 were underrepresented minority students. Amazing pool of students. This year, applicants, really, really strong. It's hard to even not invite somebody or not view their applications, and a big part of them are female students or underrepresented minorities from very diverse backgrounds, STEM disciplines more broadly. We've already been moving forward with the Naval Aerodynamics Certificate Program that James and Pablo have been spearheading. And so we have already tried to move in that direction. What I would like to provide is whatever support we can towards accomplishing this kind of, moving forward with this kind of initiative. So these are 3 opportunities that I have identified beside the NRT that we received. One is the establishment of a NSF research experience for undergraduate or REU program that provides us with a source or a potential the capability to have a high profile, oftentimes undergraduate, underrepresented minority undergraduate students to come and spend the summer for us, working with us, for instance. And oftentimes the students, they end up going into graduate programs in the institution where they spend their experience. And these are highly competitive students for NSF fellowships. Another is the supporting the development of graduate curriculum in naval hydrodynamics, or there are the NIH, the continuing education and training grants. So with this, I'm ready to finish. So again, this is my vision. One of the things that I want to make clear is that the vision is not a static set of directions, but it's something that evolves over time. It's something that is no longer top-down, me telling you where we are going, but it's much more an iterative process that requires buy-in from everybody. This is my vision, but this is going to be our journey. I don't want you to be limited by what my vision is saying. I want your input, feedbacks. The goal is to strengthen IIHR position and also to lead me to the path to become a better leader. So with this, I'll end my presentation and I'll be happy to take questions. Thank you. Yes,
specifically missing from this is the state involvement, which has grown considerably. How does the state?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the problems is that the state involvement, as I said, it has allowed us to build capacity to go after these big opportunities. The state involvement is still going to be a very important aspect. It's something that Larry, Vitek, and all of you have been working very hard towards. And so we are still going to go after all of those opportunities. We're still going to make sure that all the activities that we currently have supported through the state are still going to be there. This is just a way of expanding on that. So absolutely, I don't mean, and I apologize if it didn't come across as if it was part of it. This was trying to build on it and almost taking it as a given, despite the fact that we know how hard it is to sustain, maintain, and also grow those state opportunities, because the role that we play at the state level through the Flood Center, the IGS, the Nutrient Center, they are going to be critical for the state and all the people of the state. So absolutely, yes. Yes, Kerry.
Gabriele, you didn't speak very much about your vision of what the Institute's portfolio of disciplines is. You did mention that you wanted to hire someone in sediment transport, but are there other areas, other disciplines that are doing well here at the University of Iowa or have the potential to grow or invite in?
Yeah, so a lot of the expansion that has been going on, so if you look at the faculty headcount, how it has increased over time, that has been through having affiliation, having more faculty members from other groups joining in. So the ES group, the water sustainability cluster hires have been affiliated with the lab. So those have brought us to where we are in terms of expansion of the lab. Right now, what I'm trying to do is, rather than keep on expanding and trying to get more and more people, I'm trying to build on the skills and capabilities that we have developed so far, or that have been historically part of who we are. And so try to build on that. With that said, and to me, the reason why I brought up the sediment, somebody working with sediment transport, is because as of now, we have limited, we don't have a critical mass to conduct that kind of research. That has been part of what we have been over time. With that said, if opportunities arise of other groups to be affiliated with the lab or other people, absolutely, I would consider that. And Kelly, you're absolutely right. IIHR has such a breadth in terms of expertise that I most likely haven't given them I haven't done justice to them representing all the activities that we're going. But that was definitely part of our strength, and part of it was also highlighted, part of the opportunities growing more interdisciplinary research program. So I don't have a specific group or specific set of people who I believe right now we should, I'm considering, but if you have suggestions, I'd be more than happy to sit down and learn from you. As I said, we have been growing, And we are working a very lean machinery now. If you think about the portfolio that the research expenditures versus the FNA, that is basically what supports all the activities that we have, there is a mismatch. So everybody has been stretched to be able to support the big machinery that we have put in place through all these activities. And so now what I'm trying to do is, rather than keep on expanding, let's stabilize who we are, build on it, and then see what other opportunities present themselves. So that's the reason. Thank you. Yes, Mike.
I had the same question. We grew quantitatively and in diversity, maybe as none of the other sister institutes, Minnesota, Champaign, Urbana, and so on, have done in the past. So that's great, but here it is, we have diversity. I agree that we shouldn't expand it. What are the mechanisms? You listed sources where we go. How do you plan on the ground to take advantage of this diversity? How do we use it?
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
Absolutely. So many of the opportunities.
What are your initiatives
Yeah.
of making this diversity, making use of it?
Yeah, so absolutely. So many of the opportunities that I've listed, they're not just our core competencies. So what I mean is fluid dynamics, fluid mechanics work. It's more, we are well positioned to go after them because of the breadth of who we are as part of IIHR. Think of an STC. If you think about who joined in the meeting we held and who is going down to Baton Rouge, it's going to be me, Larry, Vita Kibrik, but there are also Eric Tate, Sylvia Secchi, and so these are people with expertise that is outside of our historical expertise. It speaks more about the breadth of what we're doing. There is a program that I mentioned, for instance, that requires an integration of science towards more applied deliverables and communications of science. This is not something that we could do without all of the expertise that we have affiliated with the lab. So those are a couple of examples of potential ways of leveraging those the capabilities we have. Now, with that said, as I mentioned, there are a number of other options that I'm sure that are out there that I haven't listed that I would love to hear more.
These are plenty, just how to organize to get them.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you designed and you designate some support for writing, then how you put the team, what
so one of the absolutely. So the reason why I believe that this is much less about me and it's much more about us is because the idea of me telling you, you go and you do it doesn't work, because if you don't want to do it, you don't do it. And so all of this needs some buy-in from people. And the same with proposals. These are high-risk, high-reward proposals, and they require, all I'm trying to do is, most likely some of us would take the lead on some of this. Because we're interested, because we are eager to succeed. The problem is that all I'm trying to do in a sense is to try to offset some of that risk by providing some administrative support. I never said that I'm going to design somebody to take the lead on it. I never said that, because then it's not really going to be a successful way of doing it. If there is the need to meet together, to provide, Mario, we've already been doing many of these, whether it's individual groups. I think that when it comes to proposals, the best thing is, rather than top-down, me telling you, you do it, it's much more identifying people with the right set of expertise. And we all know what everybody's doing, and so these connections are easy. What I can do is to facilitate those kind of opportunities by raising them and say, hey, there is this opportunity, who is interested? Or maybe directly identify a few people who could do it. Say, hey, is this something we want to go after? And by the way, if you decide to do so, this is the support you would receive. So, no, please, I hope I didn't convey that I'm going to designate somebody to take the lead on this. I don't think I said it, but I want to be clear about it. It's not an autocratic system, it's a much more grassroots approach. Yes, Jackie.
I IHR has never had a director with a business plan before. How would that play out? How would that make your directorship different?
Yeah, no, so first of all, it brought me back to class and it helped me view the students from the perspective of students. So from that perspective, it's been good. The reason why I decided to go back to school is not because I didn't have time, but because I recognized that myself as a leader, I needed work, and I still do. I needed work because I thought that a leader was somebody who said, we do this, you follow me. That's not the case. I mean, it might have been in the past, but it's somebody who surrounds himself with people who actually have complementary expertise, who are actually better than who you are. And I think that one of the elements that I appreciated related to this, to the MBA, is that it really broadened my perspective of what it is that is required to run an institution like this. There are many soft skills, if you wish, that we don't get trained on. I find myself, one of the most useful classes I've taken is one related to marketing, for instance. As engineers, I always thought, well, you do the greatest piece of work, it's going to find a way itself into the mainstream. That's not the case. The research we do, it has to be disseminated, it has to be nurtured, it has to be presented, and so that's why part of the activities that I've listed involve me with the help of others, traveling, telling what we do, disseminating the aspects. So it's part of it is this marketing, part of it is related to the development of leadership and leadership capabilities. How do we manage change? How do we handle transitions? How do we identify opportunities? What are the strategic initiatives we can take? They require an industry or sector-wide examination of all the forces that are in play. And so I think that from that perspective, the MBA has served me pretty well. So, but we had even in the past, we had amazing directors without an MBA degree. So it's just something more. Yes, Jim.
So based upon your slides, roughly the research expenditure per IIHR faculty is about $400,000 per year, correct?
It has been a plateauing if you normalize the expenditure by number of faculty, yes.
And you know, $400,000 per year is a lot of money to spend. So do you know like percent IIHR faculty whose research expenditure is about $400,000 per year?
I honestly haven't looked at the individuals directly. Part of it has to do, right now I'm trying to get a picture of everybody rather than identify specific people. So no, I don't have a sense. I haven't looked directly. Or if I did, it was some time ago on who is above $400,000.
That's the reason I asked this question is it's probably useful for IIHR to know about the strength of at least 5 departments in the project, and also the successful institutes at university level, like informatics program, digital art. There are lots of other programs on campus which are very successful. So I think it's probably useful for IIHR to know about the strength, at least at college level, at university level, and try to leverage.
No, absolutely, such a IIHR is really strong. So I thought you were looking internally. If I understand what you're asking, you were asking more, how does IIHR compare with other centers on campus? Or other departments on campus? Yeah, absolutely. So I like to think we have the best and the brightest. So IIHR is a little bit of a strange animal, if you wish, that is different from the departments or from many of the other centers on campus. We can compile all the numbers and get a little bit of a sense of how we rank in terms of expenditures by faculty, or we can look in terms of proposals submitted. We can do that and try to get a little bit of a comparison with respect to the other people, other groups on campus. So we can do that. I haven't done that yet, but that's a good suggestion.
So even at least compared with CCAT, to see the strength and weakness of IIHR.
Absolutely, and I think that We have done some internal, we've been thinking about this and how we differentiate or how we are similar to CCAD. I don't think we have run the numbers completely, but it's something that we can look at. Now, we also have to keep in mind that the size of these centers, as well as the needs of the affiliates of the centers, are most likely going to be different. And so that's another element to factor in these comparisons. Yes, sir.
You mentioned how you plan on expanding into the private sector more for funding opportunities. Do you have a sense for how the university, how that would play out amongst the university?
So we always had the capabilities, and if you remember going back to the 2004, for instance, funding source, IIHR has always had the capabilities to go after contracts and grants with either through consulting companies or utilities. And so we have been...
Any sense for why that dropped off in the last?
So yeah, so part of it has to do with some of the big projects we had before, in particular related to the fish passages and the utilities out in the Pacific Northwest. These were longer term, high reward kind of projects that now have come to their natural conclusion.
Gotcha.
And so part of it could be also shifting what the needs are. And so what I'm trying to do is to get a little bit of a better sense of what the landscape is out there, so that then we can identify what the best opportunities are. What you saw is part of it is just the natural development of some of these projects. And so, and also another element is oftentimes we end up competing, if you wish, with the consulting firms that their whole goal is to go after those kind of bids. Our main goal is to support the research by our faculty and students and staff. So it's a little bit of a different perspective. So.
I think we are out of time, so let's thank Gabriele.